All right. So good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining another edition of Kaizen Weekly Book Review Session. As we are all aware, we started the book Making It Big by Femi Otedola a while ago. This is the 13th session on that particular book. I know some people will be wondering, why are we spending so much time on a book that he or she can sit down within few hours to read and get the message therein. We are deliberate as a reading group using the Kaizen Chinese method or Japanese methodology of doing everything. And what that means is you're basically starting things and doing it bit by bit by not throwing everything at it. We have decided as a group to read on a weekly basis. And that is deliberate for us to build the habit, and the habit is the habit of reading books. Um, the book has been very interesting. Last week we discussed around, I think what we discussed last week was around don't fool with your health. No, no. Okay. Last week, sorry, just want to be sure. Last week we discussed pay a premium if need be. Apologies. And then Laja and then Morade took us through the book where they explained to us that whenever you go into any business or whenever you go into any endeavor, consult the subject matter expert and pay if required for you to get a good insight. He told us how he paid the consulting friend from China about $13 million for them to do consulting for him to review the Nigerian power sector. And they recommended for him to buy Dirigu. He had initially planned to buy Ikeja Disco, but that premium he paid gave him a good insight and provided that decision for him to buy Dirigu, which benefited him so much. But today we are going into the next lesson, which is lesson 12. And lesson 12 is titled List Your Company, Watch Your Loans. List your company, watch your loans. And I have with me today Majid Salah that will be taking us through this. In our usual culture, it takes it between 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for comments so that we can all share our insights. Majid, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lawal. Hope I'm audible.
Very audible.
Okay. Um, okay, so basically the
Just
chapter
that
is
we
a very
cannot see your
interesting.
face.
Oh, okay. Okay, can you see my face now?
Yes, you can see. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay, so the chapter list your company and watch your loan. It's a very interesting one. It's a 12 pager, and just like the title suggests, the chapter is basically divided into two parts, which is the first part talks about his lessons around moving from a limited liability company to a public listed company. And it talks about the benefits, which I'll still go into, while the second part talks about loan management and how it can be a double-edged sword if not properly managed. So he cited different examples, and I'll be going into that in the course of the review. So starting from the first part, which is list your company. So he talks about his learnings when he was more like the alpha and omega of Xenon company, which was I would have been, which was one of his major companies that were into different diesel business. And when he actually wanted to take that company public in 2007, thereabouts. And he was almost taking it public until he had cold feet and he had to pull back. And when he had when the 2008 disaster actually happened, he actually thought back to say, what if I had taken my company public? Probably I would have been shielded. And he now went ahead to talk about the different advantages of taking a company public and the shortfall of owning a limited liability company. One of the things that held him back from taking the company public was first, the issue of ego, in terms of ego and control. Because in Xenon, it was, like I said, the alpha and omega, the decider of of things. And he wrestled with himself to say him that is now more like, because if you take a company public, it means that now you lose a high form of control, and he was not ready to let go of that control. Another thing that actually more like stood in his way, in his own words, is the fear of transparency. Because in a sole proprietor or liability company, the owner is more like the overseer of the company, and he once you take your company public, it means that you are you are meant to share your books, open your books to both your regulators, to your shareholders, to your board. And he wrestled with that within himself to say, so because and he talks to ego. In what I my takeaway from that part is what he actually wrestled with is ego. And there's a reason why they say ego in business is an invisible barrier to growth, because it makes you prioritize being right over getting it right, because you believe that you can always get away with anything, and you believe that your way of doing things is the best way of doing things. And that came back to actually haunt him during the 2008 crash, when diesel crashed, and he had this issue with the Amcon, where his business almost went under. But luckily, another thing that he mentioned there was to say he was lucky enough to say when his issue happened, he happened when he was still 47 years old, which means that he still had time to recover, regardless of anything that is happening. There's still time, and one of the things that strike me there was to say, at the stage where we are, there is always time to recover, as long as, like they say, a ball without air inside, when they drops it, it stays on the ground, but with air in it, it will always bounce back up. And an arrow does not go forward without coming backward. So that part was very instructive for me. And then he now transitioned into when he comparing when he took his company public. That's how he acquired when he acquired African Petroleum, and how African Petroleum became Fort Oil, and it took the company public in 2010. And he was able to identify key strategic advantage of having a company that is a publicly listed, because now you are not the sole decider of things, and you have a group of intelligent people on your board. It is very difficult for things to go wrong, because you would always have one person putting you people in check. He talked about how the board of Fort Oil consists of different people in different walks of life. Talk about people like the CEO of Nigerian Brewery. You talk about different strategic people in and one thing I saw again in the composition of that board was they were from different walks of life, different facets of different industry, to put it that way. and he helps when decisions are taken. It is most time because you have different people thinking, and it speaks to more like the 6I principle, where you have one person being the person bringing the idea, you have one person reviewing, and you have one person doing a quality check. So it's very difficult for something to sneak through that would come back to haunt you. And you having a board means that your company would have a structure where, and that was one of the shortcomings structure. He was more like the person overseeing everything, directing who does what, and rather than having actual experts in those particular positions. He also talked about access. What a PLC gives you is access to capital, because as an LC, which is a liability company, you for you to raise capital, you will need to most likely leverage on loan. However, in a PLC, all you need to do is just create an IPO, which is initial public offers, or to sell shares. And another advantage of you selling that shares is that those same shares will be traded on the floor of the house, which means that it helps you build credibility. And once you build credit, by so doing, your governance would automatically be that was initially shown when it was in Xenon, when it still owed Xenon. And because now you have a board, which, like I said, are based on different walks of life, your risk appetite, your not risk appetite, your risk management will be well maintained, because now you have professionals doing things. And because you have professionals doing things that there are different layers, though some people will say there is a bureaucratic side to it in terms of you having multiple layers. But like like I always believe, you it's better to err on the side of caution than for you to reap the repercussion of not going the extra mile in terms of risk, in terms of curtailing your risk. And another thing he also talked about is, because it's a public is a PLC company, the likelihood of you having that business having a high level of longevity is very high. And most of those business always even outlive the owner of the business. And he talked about different brands that he actually admire. Talk about Guinness that was established in 1759, how that company till today, the company established in 1759, started growing, came into Nigeria in 1940, in the 1940s, and I think in 1960 something, they opened their first plant in Nigeria. And till today, Guinness is still a recognizable brand. Why? Because there is direction for the company, which is managed by different set of people with different expertise. And lastly, another thing he actually broached on is, for an investor, for a founder, one of the easiest way to make money is actually selling that business. And because if you have a business that have actually grown, and you have created credibility, the ease of selling that business is going to be easier compared to a limited liability. And he mentioned it when he was talking about, because Fort Oil was already a PLC. When he wanted to actually sell it in 2019, it was very, very easy for him, because even engaging with international banks, it was just more like a straight through process, because one, he had credibility, he had his shares doing well in the business, and he was in a good place. So it was easier for the people that actually bought it to see their books, see everything, and that sale went through easily. And that was just more like a summary of the first part of um, of the chapter, which talks about transition between limited liability to public limited liability. Then he now moved on to talk about the loan management and how loan management can make so in my own view, I see it as a double-edged sword because if loan is a very important tool for the growth of any business, and he also alluded to that, but if not properly managed, you would it can also be a downside to that business. And he talked about a mantra that he picked from his father, which where he said that he who goes a borrowing goes a sorrowing. And I believe what he was trying to emphasize there is to say that if you don't know the likelihood of that loan being what will be your undoing. And hello, hope I'm still audible.
You are still audible, but I think the video went off because of the quality of network. Can go ahead.
Oh, okay. 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 So, in the part of the chapter, I talked about lifestyle as a loan, how we should always avoid it at all costs. Because if you don't know, and it ties back to what he said about his dad, what his father told him in terms of he who goes a borrowing goes a sorrowing. Because if you don't know why you are taking a loan and you are using a loan to actually fortify your lifestyle, that way, by the time the chicken comes to roast, you would actually be found wanting. And he did mention during the diesel boom, where people were actually going ahead to take different sort of loan, and the banks were also obliged, they were giving them the loan. And by the time the whole business idea crashed, everybody was in a mess, and that is why he advised to say never take loan to fortify your lifestyle. Another thing he mentioned that was very critical to say, even when you now must take the loan, because taking the loan, one, you need to know why you are taking the loan. You need to understand if the loan, based on why you are taking it, if it's going to be a serious advantage or it's going to be your undoing. And he now transitioned into talking about watching your interest rates, because and he linked it back to the first part of the chapter, where it was talking about you have a very good structure. You have a CFO who is most likely who is intelligent, who understand accounting practices. Watching your interest is easier in a public limited company than an LLC or a sole proprietor, where most likely you have a very lean staff, and most likely you, the owner of the business, are the one in charge of your finances, watching those things. But because you have a CFO, and he also alluded to that in terms of every day in Fort Oil, they do their reconciliation. And once they do their reconciliation, if anything is sticking out, they can easily see it and pinpoint it to they can easily see it and just highlight it with the bank that is responsible, and that way they are able to quickly kill it, rather than he made mention of a situation where 100 million loan can automatically become 110 loan, 110 million in a very short time, if those things are not watched closely. Then he also talk about forensic oversight in terms of in terms of, because you have a structure, you can it's very easy for things that are risk related to go unchecked. And once your structure is well put in place, because you need the structure to be in place, because one, you need to report to your regulators. If those things are in place, your forensic oversight is just going to be very easy. And another thing he talked about was the strategic borrowing. in terms of, and this ties back to what I said earlier in terms of a loan being a double-edged sword, to say, if you are borrowing, why are you borrowing? Are you borrowing for the purpose, what you are borrowing for? In the long term, is that thing going to be profitable enough for you to sustain the loan? Or will you be working for the bank? Because when you are borrowing, and he talked about interest rate being very high in Nigeria, and he mentioned like only three businesses today are quite sustainable with the interest rate of Nigeria. I think he talked about telecommunication. I think he talked about oil and one additional business. Though that, in his own opinion, those are the key businesses. And lastly, he advised to say, if you must take loan, always take loan in in the local currency of the country where you want to take the loan. I think that ties to what happened to him with Zenon, where is by the time because of the change of interest, because of the change of FX rates, he was put in a mess. So I guess that's the summary of the chapter, in my own opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Majid, for that fantastic review. I love the calmness and I love the way you're analyzing it paragraph by paragraph so that we don't miss out anything. The floor is open, so if you have any comment, please feel free to raise your hand and share your thoughts about the chapter. Um, yeah. So I, I think for me, while we're waiting for others to raise hand, the first thing is you might be thinking that this chapter is only for business owners, right? Don't the book is centered around your company, but you can also look at yourself as an individual in terms of your career too. How do you apply this kind of principle? So you have to look at how professional are you, right? How much best practices do you know, right? If they take you out of your current, let's say, chaotic, unstructured ways of working and put you in a global organization where governance are required, best practices are required, where different standards are required to be implemented, would you survive? Right? Because if you don't consider it, personalize it, and look at it from the individual, you might want to think that this chapter is not applicable to me, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is the fact that Femi Otedola, despite the fact that he's very rich, he still believes in God. You can hear him say that faith and God favored me, right? And when he was talking about some of the effort he has put in the past, he's saying that despite all the challenges that he's been favored, but despite being favored, he's hungry for more. When I say hunger, I'm not saying food. I'm saying he's hungry for development, he's hungry for growth, he's hungry for expansion into different terrain. All right. Another thing I think we should learn here when he said he was not ready for leading his organization, that is positive and negative, right? Negative because he eventually learned a, a very good lesson along the line. Though he said he never regretted it, right? Because he learned some lessons, by the way. But the point here is that that makes you to also look at myself or your individual in my current role, my current establishment. Do I know my strengths? He knew because at the beginning of the book, when he was telling us about the unique selling point of Xenon, one of the things he said is simplicity in making decisions. That he could make decisions so easily, and he was scared that he will lose that power, he will lose that unique selling point. So, you yourself today, what are your strengths? Do you even understand your strengths? Just see people doing DevOps, you see people talking about cloud. Majid is a data scientist, sharp one indeed, right? I heard everybody talking about um data science, and I just stand up and say, ah, Majid is doing it, and then I'll just become a data scientist. Do you know if you are truly ready for it? Everybody's shouting today, if you ask them, I'm a developer, I'm a UI designer. Are you truly ready for that career growth? So it is critical. Another part I saw here is when he was telling us how he learned about, um, I think it was mobile or was AP, I can't remember. right? That he read newspaper. A lot of us today, we do not read newspaper. We don't listen to news. We don't know what is going on. I sit in some panels of interview and they will ask young graduates, what is the meaning of inflation? You see them blabbing. You know, there's a difference between the academic definition. The point here is, do you even understand inflation? And those people who abuse Buhari, they abuse Obasanjo, they don't even understand what is affecting them, right? So how much of the economics, the politics, the happenings around it do you know? And lastly, where I'll be closing it is about loan. Majid captured it perfectly that loan has two sides. If you don't use it well, it's going to kill. If you use it well, you are going to grow. And Femi told us one of the things he hammers so much is that you must understand that loan is a tool for growth and not use it to fund your lifestyle. Everybody, everybody is in iPhone 17 for me now. I told my colleagues I'm waiting for iPhone 20. When it gets to 20, that's when I want to buy. So don't say because everybody is using it, you're struggling with basic needs, and then you want to buy iPhone 19 and you want to go and borrow money to pay. The interest is killing you just for your lifestyle. I want to wear a particular type of. So loan is good, it's a good tool, right? But it's dangerous if not properly managed. So it's 8 o'clock. We will be stopping. Unfortunately, there's nobody raising hand. I want to thank Mogit for giving us his time because I know how much I ran after for getting him on board. I want to thank you so much for his time, and I want to thank everybody as well. Two information to say next week. Ordinarily, this week should have been a game night, but because we are moving our game night to a special program tagged Kaizen Hangout. Kaizen Hangout is a physical event, the first time this community will be meeting, right? And the way we have structured it in such a way that we are prioritizing all our reviewers. If you have been a reviewer on this platform, you are going to be prioritized. You are given the first option of refusal to attend the event physically. It's a whole day event, fun field. It's going to be fantastic. So if you're a reviewer or if you have been a reviewer, look out for an invitation. And then if you're also not a reviewer, if you're a member of our WhatsApp group or our channel, WhatsApp channel, also look out for the invitation. So it will be first come, first have, first to have it. Um, so please, we would appreciate that we'll look out for it. And that event, we'll be doing our game night at that event. It's happening on July 12th, and it's going to be in Lagos. We'll not disclose the venue yet, just for our members. Right? So look out for. So if you're a reviewer, you have priority. If you're not a reviewer, watch out in the WhatsApp group. That's number one. Secondly, is next week is our chit chat for Guru 2.0 and we're bringing somebody very fantastic to you. The first one was very nice. I enjoyed myself interviewing John Okwelegi and learning something great. In fact, since after that session, I've been reading about advanced reading techniques. I never heard of it before in my life. I learned it from that platform that day, and I've been learning about it. I've been applying some of the principles. Now we are going to meeting someone else. We're going to meet a lady this time. So please watch out for that as well. We'll share the flyers and please the broadcast and then the PR will start from tomorrow. We don't want it to clash with this. So please help us share it as well and invite your families that have teach us with the Guru 2.0 or teach us with the Guru is a platform where we learn experience, insight from people that are accomplished people and personalities, right? So that is the session. So next week, Peter with the Guru, upper week, Sunday will be our hangout, and then we'll be moving our game night there. So I also thank everybody who spent additional 4 minutes. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and we would see you again next week with Chicha with the Guru. Have a lovely night. Majid, thank you so much. We appreciate and let's have a wonderful rest. Bye bye.